Pastor Diane from Norfolk Wesleyan Church.
And I'm Pastor Peggy from Slave Lake Wesleyan. Welcome to Trivia Tuesday. Yay! I love Trivia Tuesday.
What is it you like about Trivia Tuesday, Pastor Peggy?
Well, I don't want to steal a catchphrase from Friday, but I like finding out new things.
That's why we have them at the end of the week. We start out with trivia, we end up with just saying.
Yep. I love to learn, and it's a good bookend.
Mm-hmm.
Learn at the beginning of the week, learn at the end of the week, and we're all good.
Yep. And this is our 8th season.
Wow.
Yeah. Because every week is a full season.
It's full season.
It's long enough to be.
Still no People's Choice Awards yet. I don't know what happened. Someday. No. 8 seasons and no People's Choice. Like, seriously? Come on, people.
Well, we have a special guest with us today. I love having special guests.
Yes.
Because I think they just add so much. Because we've only got so much, so we need other people to add.
Well, I got to tell you a little trivia about this special guest.
Okay.
I am not good with carpentry or driving nails or any of that kind of stuff. And this man tried to teach me.
Wow.
For about 2 weeks.
And that was it? He gave up?
And then I quit.
Oh, okay. Well, here's some trivia about this guy.
Ooh.
I live in his hometown and he lives in my hometown.
Ooh. Oh yeah, so true. I never thought of that. That's so cool.
You really can't call either one of our towns a very big deal.
Well, I think Norfolk is a bigger deal than Mercer Settlement.
Yes.
Welcome, Reverend Starks. Good to have you here.
I'm glad to be here. But I'm here and you're there, so where am I?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Can you tell us where you are?
Well, right now I am in the basement of my house looking out across a valley that will soon be lush green. It's shades of brown and green right now, and looking over at Pastor Diane's old homestead. Not that she's an old home, but it's a beautiful day here in Norton, New Brunswick.
Yay, Norton!
Well, while we were at Kingswood University, Pastor Starks was one of our professors, and he kept everything running at the campus as well, and he's helped me a lot and has mentored me in many things. But one of the things that he has mentored a lot of students in is in finances. Mm-hmm. So we are extremely grateful that you're here and you're going to share some things with us about budgeting, like we all like to budget, right?
Well, I like to travel, and because we've been confined to quarters and haven't been able to go that many places, I've been out a little bit just driving around, and I've discovered about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when it was mud season, that Janet and I wanted to go for a ride, and we went somewhere and we didn't really know where we were going. And I said, I wonder what's down this road. I've heard of this name before. And so we headed off towards Irish Settlement. It was a road, and I said, I think I've been across here before. Well, it was the spring of the year, and the road rapidly deteriorated. And fortunately, we were in the truck, and so I said it can't be that bad. And so the mud got a little deeper, and I said, well, if I just push on, we've got to come out somewhere. And then I discovered that the road actually stopped, but it did turn into a snowmobile trail, and it was up at a higher elevation, and there was still some snow on the road. And I said, well, if I just push on, I know there's a paved road just a little bit beyond here. Well, because I'm an old man, eventually I said, I need to stop and turn around and go back to where the ground is solid up to my feet. Had I been in my younger days, I would have just said, let's keep going. And probably we wouldn't be able to do this interview because I'd probably still be there, buried in mud and snow. And so you say, what does that have to do with anything? I don't know. I just thought it'd be a good story. No, not really. The reason I tell you that story is because it was a challenging road, and it was unknown to me, even though I might have been through some of those patches before in late summer when everything was all dried up. But in the rough season, it's great to know exactly where you're going, and it's great to be able to work a plan. So it was nice to be able to turn around and get back to some hard pavement, to some road that I recognized, and we were able to complete our afternoon drive happily married, well, for the most part. And that's kind of the way I see budgeting, is if you've got a plan and you've got a roadmap, and even if you get a little off course, it gives you somewhere to go back to. Something that you can set a plan and say, here's what works. So rambling around is kind of fun, but it really can get you in a lot of trouble. And you're just rambling around with money, that'll for sure get you in trouble. I've never met anybody who has actually been financially free or wasn't living with some sort of financial pressure that didn't have some kind of plan. Sometimes it's a well documented, written out spreadsheet budget. Then there are other people that just have a real sense of how much money they have and decide they're not going to spend everything they have all the time. So whether it's a written out or a concrete or whether it's just instinctive, if you don't have a plan, it's going to get you into trouble. And that's particularly true in this time when there's all sorts of things that are unexpected. Then it's a lot easier to get in trouble. It's like going for a ride on a muddy road in the spring of the year. It's a disaster looking for a place to happen. Yeah. So I was thinking about this, and that's kind of the budget idea. But I was thinking of what a blessing this time is. We were talking earlier about how we're kind of confined to quarters. We've got time on our hands to do videos that we wouldn't normally do. We'd normally have somewhere we needed to be or somebody we needed to be meeting with. But because we've got time on our hands, we can have this kind of a forum where we can talk to each other, that we can think about things that we haven't normally thought about. We can read things that we wouldn't normally read. We can interact with people that we wouldn't normally interact with. And so this can be a real blessing when it comes to your finances. There's a lot of people who spend a lot of money and they spend it without really thinking about it. I'm out and I'm at the gas station and there's a can of pop or soft drink or fizzy or whatever your current local language might be, and there's a chocolate bar, and I'm kind of hungry. It's been an hour since I've had lunch, or maybe just an hour before supper. I think I'll grab one of those while I'm here. Or I'm driving by Tim Hortons. There's a Tim Hortons in Sussex, and there's a Tim Hortons, and is there Tim Hortons in Slave Lake?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, so I'm driving by Tim Hortons, and there's a Tim Hortons in Raymondville. How cool is that? That was mind-blowing when that arrived there. But you can drive by there, and almost without thinking, you turn in and you grab a coffee, a muffin, and a donut. And so where we're confined to quarters, you can't really do that. You can't run to Tim's. It's a more of a challenge. You question, is it worth risking my life to go to Tim Hortons and have you ever tried to eat Tim Hortons or a chocolate bar through the face mask? Really, that is the most awkward thing you've ever done. I went to Costco the other day, yes, and wore my mask and was all dressed up, and I got my $1.50 hot dog and a pop, the very best deal if you're looking for a cheap quick lunch. And I picked that up, and I literally moved the hot dog towards my mouth before I realized I had the mask on.
Yeah.
So now I've got mustard all over. No, I don't. Anyways, but by the pandemic and being confined to quarters, being quarantined, staying home, it's given us more time to think, more time to slow down, and it's actually been for a lot of people a great time to save some money, because that $5 here and that $5 there that you normally spend without even thinking about it, you now have to think about. And a lot of cases you say it's just not worth the energy to go spend that $5 plus all the gas to get there. So in that way it's been a blessing. And then the other blessing is for a lot of people, there have been extra government monies that have come back to you. It's actually your money that you put into the government. but you've got back a little bit more control. You've got more control of it because it's given back to you. Some people have got that money back, and they haven't had extra expenses. Their income hasn't changed. They've actually been saving money. So they've been able to take that money, some $12, $13, $14, $2,000 or whatever it is, and actually have used that to start or to build in their emergency fund. And some people, as usual, that got it, they were getting $1,200, and so they spent $1,400 to celebrate, and and actually ended up $200 worse off. But there have been some people that have taken that and have tucked it away and have created a whole new level of emergency fund and put that together with what they've saved, and suddenly they've got a couple of $1,000s that they haven't had before. So this thing can be a huge economic blessing. Another thing, am I supposed to be just talking on here, or
You go right ahead. We love your wisdom.
Yep.
so another? Well, yeah, you're highly complimentary. This has been another good thing about this is there have been shortages. One of the shortages has been flour and baking goods. Sometimes people have had a hard job finding those. That's really a sign of an extra blessing, because that means that people are making food at home instead of going to Tim Hortons, just to pick on them, because that's one of my favorite pick-on places. Is if you go to Tim Hortons and you buy a muffin, what are they, a couple of bucks or $1.50? If you buy a muffin at Tim Hortons for $1.50, if you take the ingredients that you buy at home, you can actually make two dozen muffins for $1.50 if you use a muffin mix. But if you buy flour and whatever else you put in them, you can make 10 dozen muffins for a couple of bucks. So because people have had more time, they bought more basic ingredients and have actually made food at home instead of buying it out. So the same thing that's true with muffins is also the difference between going to the restaurant and buying the chicken dinner or buying some chicken and making your own dinner. It can really significantly help your economics. Another thing that people have found is that this time has forced people to think like people who are our age, like their parents and their grandparents thought. It's pushed us back into an older time when people tended to be more money conscious. They had less cash flow going around. They had less governmental support, and they had to take care of themselves in a whole new way. What this time has really done is it's given people time to think, and it's given them time to prepare. Now, early on in the crisis, people were rushing out and buying massive amounts of toilet paper, just like it was going to be an intestinal issue. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. What it means is that people, even though they were overreacting, it means they were thinking ahead and anticipating something that was going to happen. And always thinking ahead, even if it's a little overreaction, is a good thing. Now, Richard's prediction for the future is that this is not going to be the last emergency we're ever going to see. This, if we're blessed to continue to live, there's going to be something else that'll come along. In 2008, when the stock crashed, it was no different than in whatever it was, 1949 or whatever, and there will be other corrections in the future. So this is not going to be the only time. So this is a good time for us, even in the middle of this trauma, to say, what do I need to do to be ready? Should I let my toilet paper supply get down to a roll and a half? Well, no, that's not a good plan. It's a good idea. The next one may be an intestinal issue, and you may you had that toilet paper supply, because this is all part of making a plan. So there's going to be a repeat, and to be able to plan on that. The other thing that this has helped us with, normally in the summer we run the roads. We go here, we take a vacation, we travel there. I'd love to go see my father and my sister in Norfolk and go have coffee with the boys at the Norfolk church. That would be a special thing. My daughter got married and is in Boston, and I wasn't able to go to the wedding. I'd love to be able to go to the wedding, but I can't go anywhere. I'm confined to New Brunswick. What that's meant is that I bought some seeds, and I'm going to put a garden in when I wouldn't normally put a garden in. I'm going to be here, and I'm going to have time to take care of a garden. If I'm out running the roads, I can't take care of a garden. So one of the things that I'm suggesting to people is that think about putting a garden in this year, even if you don't normally put a garden in. Even if you only have got a couple of pots and you can put a couple of tomato plants in the pots, that becomes an economic issue, because tomato seeds are a lot cheaper than buying tomatoes. You know that most people are going to decide it's time to buy a calf and raise a cow, but think about, what can I do to raise some of my own food? It's a real good idea. Another thing that I've discovered during this time is that when I go shopping, I want to go shopping on purpose. I really want to spend as little time in the store, in that environment as possible. So I don't normally shop with a list. I've got an idea, I might have a few things, but because of the want to get in and want to get out of the store, I've made a concrete list. Now, fortunately, my wife is brilliant, and she took that list that she actually made, and she put it in the order of that you go through the store. And in our store, it's one way through the store. I got to the end of the aisle the other day and turned around and forgot the Jell-O. And I said to the woman behind me, "Do you have any idea where the Jell-O is?" She goes, "Yes." And there were 6 people 6 feet apart all the way down the aisle behind me. She said, "It's back there." Well, I had to go all the way out that aisle, exactly, all the way out and all the way around. What making the list has done, and will do for a lot of people, it'll keep you from, I want one of those, and I want one of those, and I should get one of those. And it becomes part of a plan. And grocery shopping bill has actually went down because we've only bought what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
Another strategy is if you have got food on hand, like you've got non-perishables, canned stuff and packaged stuff and stuff that you can freeze, then you tend to eat out of the stores that you have on hand. That becomes a really good practice for all the time. So instead of saying, "What's for supper? I need to run to the corner store and pick up blah, blah, blah," you say, "What's in the freezer?" You eat what's in the freezer, and if you bought what's in the freezer on sale, it reduces your whole food budget.
Now, can I interrupt for a moment, Richard?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I remember seeing a post of yours, I think it was probably back in December, and you were talking about your annual price comparison trip.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that just thrilled me.
So what we do is we have about 4 different stores that we shop at for the variety of items. And so we've listed out nearly everything that we buy on a regular basis. It's a list of maybe 100 items. And so annually, we take that list of 100 items and we go to each one of the 4 different stores that we shop at, and we determine which item is cheapest at which store. And that's on a list in the cupboard. So when we're out of chocolate chips, we look down the list. It says chocolate chips are cheapest at Costco. This is the comparative, this is what the normal price is at Costco. That way, a neat thing that happens is when you get your flyer from Save Easy or the Superstore, and it says chocolate chips are on sale for this amount, you do your price comparison and you go say, well, that's really nice, but they're at Costco for 10 cents cheaper all the time than they are on sale at this store. It helps you determine whether a sale is a resale. And so if a person was super crazy, they do that all the time, but nobody's got time for that. For one time a year to do a quick price comparison. And so we actually carry that list on our phone so that we know when you're into the Superstore and bananas are on sale this week, you go, well, yeah, they are, but Costco has them cheaper. Or you see, and it keeps you from when you're at Costco and saying, oh, look at the size of that thing. That's got to be a good deal. Well, maybe it isn't. And you can check on your phone immediately to know where it is a good deal. So our shopping list is made up of, we're going to Costco, and here's what we need to pick up while we're at Costco because we know that that's the best value.
If somebody has not done any budgeting, what's the best way to start out? to make a plan?
So the best thing to do is to create a list of everywhere that you spend money. So we've been very blessed and have lived very blessed lives and financially free lives as a result of the Lord's blessing and discipline. But to this day, we write down every single nickel that we spend, and that is recorded. That way, if we want to make an adjustment, we have some idea what we can do. People who are in financial difficulty or aren't financially free don't record what they're spending. They say, I think I spent about this much or that much. Until you write it down, you don't really know. And then a spending plan should start out, in my opinion, to be very, very basic, just to see if you can get a handle on it. Sometimes I saw one the other day that had 100 items on it. That's quite complicated for an individual or a family's spending plan. And it gets probably too specific, but to have some general categories, and there's a lot of good tools out there. If you Google family budgeting, give you some ideas of what sort of percentages are normal. But the most important thing is to know where you're at. And if you can find out where you're at, then you can make adjustments. It's like me out on my dirt road. I've been out places on like that before and had no idea where I was. I'd paid no attention. I was busy listening to the radio or talking or watching the scenery. And then I said, how in the world am I going to get back? There's nothing like GPS and that little arrow that comes up that says you are here. Yeah. and spending is the same thing. If you can get an idea of where you are, then it gets you a better idea of where you're going to go.
I know a couple of people that I work with because I do financial planning with some of our clients and stuff like that here at the church and everything. And the very first thing that I ask them to do is to keep track of everything you spend for a week. Mm-hmm. And just to have an idea, every nickel that goes out, what are you spending it on? And I remember when I first done that, I was a young girl and couldn't believe how much money I spent one week in coffees or those little things that you pick up when you run into the store to get gas or whatever it is that and by the end of the week, it was like $120 that I didn't even know left my hand. And I'm like, I had no awareness that I was spending that money and so broke.
And one of the advantages of writing it down is if you've got to write it down, you're going to think twice before you spend it.
I was just going to say that the first time I was at college 100 years ago, I had this little notebook and I wrote everything down, every little penny. And I had some classmates that kind of laughed at me. But at the end of the year, even with student loans, I had money left over and I loaned to my parents because they were going through some difficulties. Mm. The next year, I thought, I got this all figured out. I don't need to write everything down. And then some idiot gave me a credit card.
Oh, credit cards. Oh,
so,
I have.
Writing it down as I go along, do I want to really write down that I spent that money on a chocolate bar? No.
And I have found, and years ago, when we first got a credit card, we had that same surprise at the end of the month when the bill came. Fortunately, it was low enough and we had lived within what we thought was acceptable and we had sufficient money to pay for it. But it was a shock when it all got piled up into one big pile. And so one of the things that really helped us is that we wrote our credit card down just like we spent cash. And we deducted it from our checking account so that that money didn't look like it was available. Yeah. Look at your checking account and you'd say, well, there's $300 in it. And, but I've got a credit card bill coming of $200. And so it really helped us to keep track of it even when we were using plastic. Otherwise, it just is a surprise at the end of the month.
It's funny because if the credit card If everyone did what I do with credit cards, the credit card company would stop making credit cards because I buy my item on the credit card because I want the cash back, but I then go and pay it immediately so I don't get charged any interest, but I'm still getting the cash back for it.
Yeah, and that again is that this is a good time when you're got time to think. So there's a lot of things that we've thought about, and now is a good time to think, well, how could I save some money, or how could I make a difference? One of the things that I've discovered that not everybody thinks the way I do. That's probably a good thing, but when it comes to finances, I look for people who are as conscientious as we try to be, who are people that are feeding into me to reinforce my positive behaviors. I can be like anybody else and have the negative behaviors and do this and do that I don't really want to do. I've got friends like that, but when they're talking about money, about the good deal that they got on spending money that they didn't have on things that they didn't need to impress people that they don't like, that's my favorite things, I really discount what they say and don't follow their financial advice at all. But I have other friends who are extremely financial savvy, and so just the same way that I don't listen to somebody who's never grown a garden tell me how to grow a garden, I listen to people with financial savvy who really know how to handle finances, and so this is a good time to be thinking about it and to be including those people in your lives. In fact, I'm taking a class online now about finances, and the part of the purpose is I want to have those kind of people speaking into my life so that I can learn some things and reinforce the positive behaviors that we found effective.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. What would you say? I mean, this is totally unscripted, and I don't know if you have a response for this.
I have an opinion on every subject alive.
This is true. But
and a few dead ones too.
But one of the questions that I have that some people ask is like, how can I give when in a time where I'm trying to budget? Should I make giving a priority? What would you say to that?
I believe for those who are believers that giving is a part of really following through with what is expected and what is normal for the Christian life. I think it's a healthy thing for everybody, because I think we're designed to live in community. We're designed to be part of something that's bigger than all of us. I have received gifts from people who had far less than what I have. And I've heard people say, I'm not poor unless I'm too poor to give. And so I think there's a large blessing on being able to give, even during times of need. So for a believer, I think it's an expectation, it's a choice. We found the joy in giving. But even for non-believers, there's something great about being part of a community. I've been working at the local food bank. It's been interesting to watch people show up and give. Recently, one of the clients showed up and they didn't need all the groceries that we gave them. And they said, oh, here, take this back, give this to somebody that needs it more than I do. There's an inherent blessing on giving. Giving is a good and healthy thing. And it's recommended for everybody all the time. And when the Bible said it's more blessed to give than to receive, it's not just a believer thing. It's a general life rule. And the happiest people and the people that are most blessed are those that have put themselves in a position so that they're able to be generous. Generosity is a good, healthy, emotionally, mentally, and community thing to do. So we all feel good when we say, hey, look at what we did, we gave together, and we made a difference there. That's a healthy thing. And the church just ought to do that better than anybody else.
Yeah. And I mean, to be able to be part of something bigger than just ourselves, because sometimes we're sitting at home and we're like, there's nothing that I can necessarily do right now, but I can give to someone who is.
Exactly.
And I give to an organization that is. And I tell you, for your mental health, sometimes that is amazing to be able to help somebody who's helping somebody else.
Sorry.
So another thing that I think that's important at this time is to be able to recognize that we are in a challenging time and to reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard thing for most North Americans to say, I need help. We're fiercely independent. With the exception is we oftentimes think the government ought to help us. That's a pretty typical experience. The government ought to do this, they ought to do that. And that's a challenge too. But I'd like to suggest that maybe this is the time when we could reach out to some people that we trust and say, hey, do you have any ideas how I might do this? Sometimes a friend who's got your best interest at heart can help you to make a small adjustment that'll make a significant difference. And so if anybody's happened to watch this that needs some help, to reach out and ask for help, or to be a person who's tuned to be able to drop a little suggestion that maybe, hey, here's a way you could save a buck, or to be able to talk about of here's how I made a difference in my life by here's how I saved $1.
Yeah, so true. I love that. We well, certainly a lot to think about here, and a lot to digest and move forward from here. But we thank you so much, Richard, for coming on and sharing with us and some of your little tokens of wisdom. Nuggets of wisdom. We love them. So you've been a great mentor to me. I know that, even though I dropped out of our woodworking thing.
As I recall, it was on the day that we were going to learn to repair sewer lines that you dropped.
I think it was in what's that? The men's dorm, Ingersoll?
Yes, I said we need to go to the men's dorm to repair the sewer down in the basement. And you said, oh, I have something very important to do. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. In fact, I don't ever really want to do this again.
That's different than my memory, but it's close. We want
to make the stories interesting, even if they're not true. Don't let a few facts get in the way of a good story.
Right. Well, I do remember going into Ingersoll with you and trying to fix a shower and a couple of other little things. But I do remember that I did have another student ministry that I was doing, but I really, really knew that I needed skills as well, but I couldn't fit it all in. And that's actually why I had to drop out. But I tell you, I have regretted that several times since I moved to Sligo. Having the inappropriate tools for the job too is cumbersome when you don't have the right tools for the job. And that goes back to budgeting. When you don't have the right tools for the job, if you're not tracking, if you're not writing things down, if you're not conscious of where you're going with this, if you don't implement the right tools, then you're really not going to get very far.
One of the things a student taught me a few weeks ago or a few months ago was that there are apps available that you can write everything down on your phone, and your phone will help to keep track of that for you. I don't tend to use my phone that way, but that is an excellent thing. If you can just take a picture of your receipt right on the spot and record what you spent, it helps you, particularly when you get aged like me, to try to remember when you got home. My method is I just tuck the receipt in my pocket. I get a receipt for everything. Then that way I'm able to record it when I get home. But if I was a little more phone savvy, I'd put it right on my phone.
I know.
I have learned another good tip is I take a picture of my shopping list, because when I get to the store and I lose my list, then I've at least got the list on my phone.
And I know that a couple of the banks actually, what they do is I don't know how they do it, but they tally things up and they tell you how much you ate in takeout, how much you spent here, how much you spent over here. And I have a friend of mine that looked at her phone one day and at her bank statement or something, and my bank doesn't do it, or that I know of anyway. And she's like, oh, I spent like $300 in takeout last month. And I'm like, $300 in takeout? And I said, how do you know that? And she said, my phone told me. Wow. So I do know that banks, like some of the banks are doing this kind of thing. And once you have that realization, you just like, okay, that's it. I'm tightening this up.
So a couple other things just before we quit. This is a good time to be very aware of your finances, because there's some scammers out there that are offering good get-rich-quick schemes and ways of scamming you out of your money and calling for your personal information, saying that they're part of the COVID-19 and they're looking to take care of your government things for you. You have to be really sensitive. So they're preying on people during a time of considerable panic. And the other thing is there have been a number of organizations, banks and finance companies that have offered deferment on payments. And when they offer deferment on payments, what they're really doing is that they're offering an opportunity not to pay, but the interest is still accumulating. And then in many cases, you're paying interest on the interest for deferment. So people who have been the most unwise have got government money that they didn't expect, spent it, and took the deferments and thought that they were a lot better off, when they actually this time put them significantly further behind, again, because they didn't have a plan. They went down a muddy road and they got stuck.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Richard. This has been very informative, and I love learning new things, and I love being able to provide tools for people. So if you're out there and you need help with your finances, or you just want to talk to somebody or something like that, reach out to our churches. We would be happy to put you in contact with someone, give you some tools, give you some advice, because as Christians, we want to be holistic in our life, and in the way that we want to be good stewards of the blessings that God has given us. So we thank you for your time, Richard. We can't pay you for it. We wish we could.
This is not a paid gig?
No.
You said you wanted to talk to me about money, and I assumed you were going to give me money. But at least you didn't ask me for money, so that's, I suppose.
We did not ask.
But
we will take.
Now that I mentioned it.
Now that you mentioned it, yeah. You can give too. I'm Pastor Peggy from Slave Lake, Alberta.
I'm Richard from Norton, New Brunswick.
Yay, Norton! I'm sorry. I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk, New York. Join us tomorrow for Warm Hearted Wednesday. Until then, be safe.
Be healthy.
And be the church.
Bye, everyone.